My name is Zyra Kale. I'm 31 years old now. Yesterday something really big happened. Forbes, the magazine that writes about the most successful people, released a new list of people under 30 who are doing amazing things. And my picture was on it. Next to my picture was a huge number. $98 million. That is how much my app is worth. My app is called TideSync and it helps small beach hotels run perfectly. It can handle all the bookings, adjust prices, and make everything smoother than any human could. Before yesterday, my phone had been completely quiet for 9 months. No calls, no messages, no happy birthday, no Merry Christmas, nothing. Then at exactly 10:12 in the morning, my phone lit up with a name I hadn't seen in a long time. The message was only 2 lines. Family dinner tonight. 7:30 sharp. We have big news. I stared at the screen for about 10 seconds. 9 months of silence. And now, just 12 hours after the Forbes article went live, suddenly they wanted me to come to dinner. I typed back only one sentence. Sorry, busy. Forbes party starts at 7. The little read check appeared almost immediately. Then the 3 dots started jumping across the screen like Dad was typing back. They bounced for a long time. But I didn't wait. I locked my phone and tossed it on the couch. They thought they were texting the same quiet daughter they had ignored for years. They had no idea the girl they didn't pay attention to had now become the person who could outshine them in every way. Before I tell you exactly what happened at that dinner, I want you to imagine something. That feeling when you know no one is cheering for you, no one is clapping for your hard work, and yet you decide you will make the world notice you anyway. That's how I felt, and I want you to follow every moment because it's going to be a big surprise. 2 years ago in May, I was standing backstage at MIT's Killian Court. I was about to graduate with a master's degree in electrical engineering and computer science. I was trying really hard not to throw up. My black graduation gown hung loose on my shoulders. I had lost 12 pounds that final semester because I was surviving on coffee and sleeping only 3 hours a night. The crimson hood felt heavy on my shoulders. It felt like it already knew I didn't belong there alone. Outside, there were 3,500 chairs lined up perfectly in front of the stage. Behind the podium, the Charles River sparkled under the sun. Families were filling every row, waving signs, holding balloons, ready to take pictures. I held my name card so tightly that the edges cut into my fingers. I had sent 6 tickets to my family in Virginia Beach, right in the front row. I paid extra to make sure they got there on time. I told myself maybe traffic on I-95 was terrible. Maybe they were stuck in the parking lot. Maybe they would show up in the second half. I told myself anything that would keep me walking forward across that stage. The dean started calling names. Each graduate walked across the stage and families cheered loudly. I looked at those 6 empty seats, wishing they would magically fill. They didn't. Zyra Elizabeth Kale, Master of Science in Electrical Engineering and Computer Science. My name was called. The walk across the stage felt endless. The wooden stage bent slightly under my borrowed heels. The president smiled, handed me the leather folder and shook my hand once. Cameras flashed from every direction but none of them were mine. I looked down one last time at the empty seats. Still nothing. I forced the smile they wanted for the official photo, turned my tassel and stepped off the stage. The moment my foot touched the grass, my phone buzzed against my hip. Dad's message said, "You actually went through it without us there. Fine. Don't expect another dime from me. You made your choice." I stopped walking. Around me, graduates were hugging, laughing, crying happy tears. Some fathers lifted their daughters up into the air. Some mothers were crying into bouquets of roses. I stood frozen in the middle of it all, reading Dad's words over and over until the screen went black. The courtyard smelled like fresh-cut grass and fancy perfume. I could hear champagne corks popping somewhere. Something inside me broke. But I didn't cry. Not yet. I walked alone across the grass, past the happy families, past the proud fathers who would never be mine. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Mom. "Tell us where you are. We're stuck in traffic." I didn't answer. I kept walking until I reached Massachusetts Avenue. I sat down on the curb outside the student center and finally let the tears come. They were silent tears. They had always been silent. A janitor sweeping the sidewalk glanced at me and then looked away. Nobody stopped. Nobody asked if I was okay. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my gown, stood up and took a taxi to Logan Airport. I had a 9:15 p.m. flight back to Norfolk because I couldn't afford to miss another delivery shift. I was still wearing my cap and gown on the plane. The flight attendant asked if I wanted to hang it up. I told her no. I folded it into the overhead bin like it was just another carry-on bag. Somewhere over Rhode Island, I opened my laptop on the tray table and started writing the code that would one day put my name on that Forbes list. Empty seats teach you exactly who will never show up when it matters. I decided that day that the next time the world looked at me, no one would have the choice to ignore me again. Those empty seats at graduation didn't happen by accident. I learned very early that in the Kale house, attention was a very limited thing and it was always given to someone else. When I was 12, I had been taking violin lessons for 3 years. My teacher entered me into the Virginia Beach Youth Orchestra solo competition. I practiced every single day after school until my fingers bled. The concert was on a Saturday night at the Sandler Center. I wore the navy velvet dress my mom had bought me 2 years earlier. By then it was too short at the sleeves and the hem. Dad picked me up from rehearsal the week before and said, "Caleth made varsity quarterback." The team had a scrimmage that same night. "We're all going to support him." I asked if we could at least come to the second half of my concert. Mom laughed like I had said something funny. "Zyra, family shows up for family. Caleth needs us more." I played the concert anyway. The auditorium was packed. I walked onto the stage, bow shaking, and scanned the crowd for 5 familiar faces. None of them were there. I performed Vivaldi's Spring perfectly, took my bow to polite applause, and went home on the city bus with my violin case banging against my knees. The next morning, pictures of Caleth in his jersey and Leora holding a handmade poster covered the refrigerator. My certificate from the competition went straight into a drawer. That was the first time I understood the rules. If someone else needed the spotlight, mine got switched off. High school followed the same pattern. Caleth wrecked 2 cars before he turned 18. Both times, Dad replaced them without question. Leora decided she wanted to be an influencer at 15, and Dad bought her a brand new iPhone and ring light for Christmas. I asked for a laptop that actually ran coding software without crashing. Dad told me to use the library. When college acceptance letters came, I got into William and Mary on a partial scholarship. Dad looked at the tuition bill and said, "That's a lot of money for a hobby. Maybe try community college first." 2 months later, Caleth announced he was taking a gap year to travel. Suddenly, there was $25,000 available for him to backpack Europe with his friends. I graduated as valedictorian, applied for every scholarship I could find, and chose MIT because the financial aid package covered everything except books. Dad still sent a monthly allowance, $500, enough for groceries and the occasional Metro card. But it wasn't generosity, it was control. As long as that money kept coming, he could still threaten to stop it. I worked 3 jobs anyway. Morning shifts pouring lattes at the student center, afternoons tutoring calculus to freshmen who partied too hard, and 3 nights a week delivering Thai food across Cambridge and Somerville in my beat-up Camry. I smelled like espresso and curry most of the time, but the tips paid for server cloud credits and the first lines of code I wrote at 3 o'clock in the morning when the dorm was finally quiet. Every winter break I went home to Virginia Beach hoping maybe something would be different. It never was. The family business, 7-tiered beach motel built in the 1970s, was losing money. Guests left bad reviews about peeling paint, spotty Wi-Fi, and beds that sagged in the middle. Dad refused to update anything. "People come for the ocean, not the internet," he said, then spent the renovation budget on a new fishing boat. I watched bookings drop year after year while Caleth managed one property and spent most afternoons on the golf course, and Leora filmed TikToks on the beach in designer bikinis Dad bought her. I tried to talk to him once, showed him spreadsheets, explained dynamic pricing and online travel agencies. He patted my head like I was still 12 and said, "Sweetie, leave the business to the men." So I stopped asking. Instead, I built my own thing in secret. Every dollar I earned from those 3 jobs went into servers, APIs, and the first version of an algorithm that could predict hotel occupancy, adjust rates in real time, and connect to every booking site at once. I named the prototype TideSync because it moved with the waves of demand no one else bothered to read. By the time I defended my master's thesis, TideSync already had 3 small independent hotels testing it. Revenue jumped 42% in the first quarter. I knew then this wasn't just a project anymore. It was my way out. And the empty seats at graduation were the final proof I no longer needed their money, their approval, or their presence. When Dad's text lit up my phone after 9 months of dead silence, I didn't feel anger anymore. I felt curious. Curious how fast they could rewrite 9 months of nothing into a family emergency that suddenly required my presence. I put the phone on the kitchen island and let the screen go dark. The apartment was quiet except for the soft hum of the ocean 2 blocks away. I walked to the big windows that went from the floor all the way to the ceiling. I looked down at the boardwalk. The lights were turning on for the evening. People were walking, laughing, and holding hands. Families looked happy and normal. Children were running ahead of their parents, parents were smiling, and couples were holding hands. I turned away from the window and walked to a closet in the hallway. It was the closet I never used for guests. Inside were clothes from a different time in my life. There was a gray sweater I wore during finals week at MIT. It had a frayed sleeve from when I studied all night. My jeans were faded and looked like they had been through 100 washes. My brown boots, which I bought from a thrift store in Somerville because they were cheap and warm, were there too. I took all the clothes out and laid them carefully on the bed, remembering the days I used to wear them. After that, I went to the garage. Normally, I drive my matte black Audi. It smells new even though I've had it for a while. I walked past it, then past the Tesla that I hardly ever touch. At the very back of the garage, under a gray cover, was my old 2014 Toyota Camry. I bought it the week I moved back to Virginia Beach after college. The paint on the hood faded from too many summers in the sun. The driver's side mirror was cracked. The check engine light had been on for 3 years because fixing it would cost more than the car was worth. But I kept it ready for nights like this. I pulled the cover off, tossed it into the trunk, and slid into the driver's seat. The seat still smelled faintly of the Thai food I used to deliver when I was working after school. The key turned slowly, making a familiar grinding sound. I backed out slowly. The tires crunched on the epoxy garage floor. I started driving south on Atlantic Avenue. The sun was going down behind the hotels, painting the sky in orange and pink over the water. I rolled the windows down so I could feel the salty air whipping through the car. I didn't play any music. I wanted to feel every second of this drive, every moment, every sound of the ocean and the city. I thought about the first message I sent back, the one that made Mom send me crying emojis for 20 minutes straight. I thought about how easy it would have been to ignore them. But I was curious. Not curious in a happy or nice way, but the cold kind of curiosity, the kind that wants to see the truth. I wanted to watch people show exactly who they were when they thought they had already won. I turned left onto Alaskan Road. I drove past strip malls and surf shops. I passed neon signs that blinked and said things like, 2 for 1 crab legs. Then the Cavalier Hotel appeared on the right. Its big white columns shone under bright new lights. I pulled into the circular drive and stopped behind a line of fancy cars. Range Rovers, Mercedes, cars that cost more than my house. The valet was young, maybe 19 or 20. He was wearing a neat navy uniform that looked crisp and new. He looked at my old Camry and hesitated. I could tell he didn't know whether to put it in front with the other fancy cars or hide it around back. I handed him the keys without saying a word. He looked at my gray sweater, my messy hair, and my frayed jeans and smirked. "Running a little late, ma'am?" he asked, reaching for the ticket. "Traffic," I said, and walked away before he could figure out if I was joking. Inside the hotel lobby, the air smelled like lemon polish and something fancy and old. The marble floor shone under the chandeliers. I saw my reflection in a gold-framed mirror. Tired eyes, messy bun, clothes that shouted, "Grad student broke." Perfect. The hostess saw my reservation and smiled too brightly. "Right this way, Miss Kale. Your party is already seated." I followed her through the main dining room. Couples wore suits and sparkly dresses. Waiters carried trays with oysters and steak that looked like artwork. The private room was at the very back, behind 2 wooden doors. I could hear laughter from inside. It was loud, like people were trying to convince themselves everything was okay. I stopped just outside the door and rested my hand on the brass handle. I felt nothing. No nerves, no sadness, just a calm certainty. I knew that whatever happened in the next hour, I wouldn't care about what anyone thought anymore. Then I pushed the doors open and stepped inside. I walked into the private room at the Cavalier exactly on time. Mom saw me first. She let out a high-pitched squeal that made the waiter jump and ran across the carpet with her arms open like we were in one of those airport reunion commercials. Her perfume hit me first, heavy gardenia and something expensive. She hugged me so tight that my ribs creaked. "There's my baby girl," she whispered into my hair, loud enough for the whole room to hear. We missed you so much. Dad stood next. He smoothed his navy blazer, the one he wears when he wants to look important. He clapped both hands on my shoulders, gave them a firm shake and grinned wide enough to show the new caps he got last year. Caleb raised his bourbon glass from his chair. Nice clothes. Going for that homeless chic vibe. Leora was already holding her phone, filming everything. Smile Zyra. This is going straight to my story. Forbes star returns to the fam. Uncle Theron just nodded, lifting his scotch like it was normal. Mom guided me to the table like I was the guest of honor. The round table was set for 6 people, with heavy silverware and 3 wine glasses catching the chandelier light. A bottle of VV Klecko wine sat sweating in a silver bucket. Dad popped the cork and foam spilled over his knuckles. Caleb cheered like they'd won something. To our brilliant girl, Dad boomed, filling every glass to the top. Forbes under 98 million valuation. Who would have thought our quiet little bookworm would turn into a tech boss? Everyone raised their glasses. I lifted mine but didn't drink. Leora leaned across the table, eyes sparkling. Okay, but seriously, when do we get the family discount on your app? I have like 200,000 followers dying for beach content. Caleb snorted. Yeah, or maybe invest in something that actually makes money. Dad gave him a sharp look, then smiled at me again. We'll get to that first. We're so proud, aren't we? Mom nodded and dabbed at her dry eyes with a napkin. Beyond proud. I've been telling everyone at the club. My daughter, the Sue. The waiter brought the first course. Jumbo lump crab cakes and tuna tartare arranged like modern art. Dad ordered another bottle of wine without asking. He waited until the plates were cleared before sliding a glossy black folder across the table. The cover had gold letters. Luxury collection, a new era. Inside were pictures of sleek white buildings, infinity pools spilling into the ocean, rooftop yoga decks, and smiling people drinking cocktails in linen clothes. We're finally doing it, Dad said, using the deep voice he uses when he talks to bankers. We're taking the old motel, tearing down the broken ones, and turning this prime oceanfront property into a 5-star wellness resort. Spa, farm-to-table food, celebrity chef already in talks. This is generational wealth. Mom clasped my hand. We're even keeping the Kale name on the marquee. Legacy. Caleb tapped the projected numbers page. Construction starts next quarter. Total cost about $22 million. Banks are paying most of it, but they want family investment first. Dad leaned in, elbows on the table, eyes on me. We need $2 million as a bridge family investment. 6% interest, paid back in 24 months once the resort is making money. Better than a savings account and keeps everything in the family. Mom squeezed my hand, diamond bracelet flashing. It's what families do, sweetheart. We take care of each other. Leora was still filming discreetly under the table. Uncle Theron nodded like it was normal. Dad slid a sheet across the table. It was a wire transfer form with my name typed at the top. The routing and account numbers were blank. All I had to do was fill it in. I let them finish their sales pitch. Glossy brochures, 3D pictures, promises. I waited until Dad leaned back, satisfied. Mom's smile started to slip. Caleb checked his watch. Then I reached into the canvas tote I had brought instead of a purse and pulled out a plain manila folder. No logo, no gold letters, just cheap paper with public records printed on it. I placed it in the center of the table and opened it slowly. Before I sign anything, I said, voice flat, let's talk about what's actually happening with the motel. Dad chuckled, still excited. We just showed you the future, honey. I slid the first document across the table. It was a notice of default from Atlantic Union Bank, stamped 3 months ago. It said the business missed the last 4 payments on the mortgage. Total owed, $872,000. Mom's hand flew to her pearls. That's just a timing issue. I turned the page. There was a second document. The bank sent the last warning letter 31 days ago. In Virginia, people have 42 days to fix their money problems after that letter, or the bank can take everything they own. That meant there were only 11 days left before they could lose everything. The house, the cars, even the business could all be gone. Caleb, my older brother, shifted in his chair. He tried to act calm, but I could see he was nervous. Banks just scare people, he said, trying to sound brave. I didn't answer him. I had to keep going. There were more papers to look at, and this was serious. On the third sheet there was a note about another loan. A private lender in Richmond had quietly put a claim on the family house 18 months ago. Dad had borrowed another $1.5 million at 14% interest. The big balloon payment was due last quarter, but he had rolled it into another loan just to keep the lights on. Uncle Theron cleared his throat. "Those are aggressive lenders," he said. "Everyone borrows like that." I looked directly at Dad. "If the business loan is due, the bank can take the house too. You have no more money to borrow." The room felt suddenly colder. Mom wasn't smiling anymore. Dad's face turned dark red. "This is family business," Dad growled. "You don't talk about this at the table." I didn't yell. I stayed calm. "You made it my business when you asked me for $2 million that I earned while you ignored me." Leora, my younger sister, tried to laugh, but it came out forced and weak. "You're being dramatic," she said. I opened the last page, a printout from the Virginia Beach Circuit Court. The foreclosure auction was already scheduled. 42 days from the final notice. That was it. No extra time unless Dad paid everything back. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the silverware rattle. "Where did you get these public records?" he demanded. "Anyone can go to the clerk's office and get them," I said. "My lawyer, Caius Arden, got them last week. He's very thorough." Caliph leaned forward. "So what? You came here to make us look bad." "No," I said. "I came to see you ask the daughter you ignored for money you can't pay back." Mom started twisting her napkin until it tore. "We're your parents. You don't talk to us like this." Dad pointed a thick finger at me. "After everything we gave you, you gave me nothing but threats and excuses." I cut in. "I built everything else while you spent money on Calith's failed side jobs and Leora's sponsored posts." Uncle Theron tried the guilt trick. "Family takes care of family, Zaira." I closed the folder. "Not anymore." Everything changed instantly. Dad's fake calm disappeared. Mom's eyes filled with real tears. Calith's fists were clenched. Leora dropped her phone. "You ungrateful little," Dad started. I stood up. The chair scraped the floor loudly. I pulled out my phone and showed Dad a message he sent 2 years ago, exactly when I graduated from MIT. I read it aloud, word for word, in the same cold way he had written it. "You actually went through with it without us there. Fine. Don't expect another dime from me." Dad's face went pale. Mom froze with her wine glass halfway to her lips. Caliph opened his mouth, then closed it. Leora's phone fell from her fingers. I locked my screen and looked at Dad. "Sorry," I said calmly. "Busy. Forbes party starts at 7. The room was silent, like I had slapped everyone. Mom's voice cracked. "This is childish, Zaira." Dad tried to stand, but his knees gave out. "You will not speak to me like that." I started blocking them one by one on my phone so everyone could hear the soft tones. Dad first, Mom next, Caliph, Leora, and finally Uncle Theron. Each little sound was louder than the last. The doors behind me opened. Caius Arden came in, wearing a tall gray suit and carrying a perfect leather briefcase. He didn't smile. He only looked at me. "Everything is ready," he said, putting a thin blue folder on the table. The top page had the seal of the Virginia Beach Circuit Court and the letterhead of Atlantic Union Bank. Dad stared at it like it might explode. Caius kept speaking calmly. "As of 4:30 today, Miss Cale bought the first loan and all other claims from the original lender. The bank accepted it. The acceleration stands. No extra time to pay. The foreclosure sale will happen. Personal residence included. All vehicles under the business will be repossessed in 10 business days." Leora cried, her makeup running. "This will ruin my brand." Uncle Theron drained his glass and stared at the bottom. I picked up my tote bag. The chair legs scraped as I pushed it in. Dad reached for the folder, but his hands shook and he couldn't hold it properly. His eyes scanned the legal words, confused. I said, "I already did it." Caliph finally yelled. "You bought our debt. What kind of monster are you?" "The kind who learned from the best," I said. Dad's hands shook as he flipped the folder open. His eyes were wide. Mom's face was pale. I walked to the door. Caius left a business card. "My office will handle everything from here." I didn't look back. The heavy doors closed with a soft click. 1 year later, I was driving north on I-64 in the fall, windows down, salt air in my hair, heading toward a house I actually owned. I took the exit for First Colonial Road, the same one I used when I still thought family meant something. The old neighborhood looked smaller in the soft October light. I slowed as I passed the cul-de-sac where the Kale house used to be. Red foreclosure tape crisscrossed the front door like a crime scene. A crooked auction sign leaned in the tall grass. The fountain Dad installed years ago was cracked and empty. 2 houses down, a repo truck sat at the curb. The black Range Rover that used to block the driveway was lifted with wheels spinning uselessly. The driver waved at a neighbor watching from her porch, sipping coffee, enjoying the show. I kept driving. At a stoplight near the warehouse district, I saw Caleb unloading boxes from a semi, wearing a fluorescent vest. His hair was shorter. He looked tired. No more designer sunglasses on his head. He didn't see me. Leora appeared on a billboard near Lynn Haven Mall a week later, but not in a good way. The Virginia Pilot newspaper ran the foreclosure story on the front page. Her tear-streaked Instagram live denying everything only made the screenshots go viral. Sponsors dropped overnight. The last post on her feed was a black square with the words, "Taking a break." Mom and Dad moved into a small 1-bedroom apartment with outside hallways and shared laundry. I know because the pawn shop on the corner sent me an email when Dad's Rolex showed up in their system. Mom's 3-carat engagement ring came 2 weeks later. The listings were public. I didn't answer the unknown numbers called after the auction. I didn't need to. The message was delivered. My new house sits on a quiet lake 2 hours west, far enough from the ocean that I can only smell it on the wind sometimes. My mailbox reads Arden in simple brushed steel. I legally changed my name the same week the judge signed the foreclosure order. Not because I married Caius, though that made paperwork cleaner, but because Arden was the first person who chose me without conditions. Some mornings I sit on the dock with coffee and watch the mist lift from the water. The silence here is different from the silence I grew up in. It's not waiting for someone to notice me. It's the sound of finally being home. People ask if I feel guilty. I don't. I learned that love isn't something you owe someone just because they are family. Real families earn that name every day. Mine ignored me until I became useful, then tried to cash me in like a lottery ticket. I refused to be their winning number. Walking away wasn't cruel. It was the first honest thing any of us ever did. Some days I still think about that dinner. I remember the way the light fell across the table, how Mom's eyes filled with tears, how Caleth's fist shook, and how Leora's phone slipped from her fingers. I remember Dad's thick finger pointing at me and Uncle Theron's cold stare. I remember feeling small at first, but then I remembered that I wasn't really small. I was strong. I had learned to stand for myself. Even though I didn't look back that night, I knew it was the turning point. It was the moment I stopped waiting for anyone to notice me. The moment I stopped hoping for love that was never there. The moment I finally became my own person. The lake is quiet now. I can hear the birds, the water, and the wind through the trees. Some mornings, Caius sits with me. He doesn't say much. He doesn't need to. Just being there feels right. I still get letters in the mail, sometimes bills from old accounts. Sometimes notifications from the pawn shop or the auction house pop up in my inbox. But they don't scare me anymore. I know I am safe. I know I have a home. I know I have peace. And best of all, I know that I don't have to depend on anyone who only wanted me for what I could give them. I have people who choose me. People who care. People who are real. That is what family really means. The old house is gone, the Range Rover is gone, the fountain is broken. But I am here. I am free. I am finally home. And for the first time in my life, I can breathe without waiting for someone else to notice me.